Good morning. The state began by using the phrase common sense. You heard it yesterday during jury selection, and you heard it again today in the state's opening. And they're using the phrase common sense because they want you to ignore the mountain of reasonable doubt that exists in this case. I want to start by telling you guys that much of what Mr. Vance Curzan just talked to you about, we don't dispute. So a lot of this trial isn't in dispute. The timeline, the fact that Max met Sade, Max had met her, went on a date with her, that they went to the Twisted Fisherman, that they went to Duke's, that they were out together that night, that they went back to Max's house, none of that is in dispute. The fact that body parts wash up at Warrimont Park, the fact that body parts are found at 31st and Galena, the fact that those body parts belong to Sade, nobody here is disputing any of that. It's horrible what happened to Sade. It's horrible. Nobody deserved that. And what the state wants you to do is use the emotion of that along with this phrase like common sense and use that emotion to convict Mr. Anderson. But I implore you in this trial, your most important job as jurors is to study the evidence closely that's introduced by the district attorney's office. We have no burden of proof. Max is not required to prove anything. The entire burden lies here and rests here entirely on the district attorney's office. And it's the highest burden in the land to marshal together, to put together enough evidence to bring to you to show that Max killed Sade and that he committed those other crimes. There are a few pieces of evidence that the state will rely heavily on. Max near the scene of the car, Max when it's burning, Max being the last person to go on a date with Sade. And that's frankly why law enforcement zeroed in on Max. You are going to hear that the amount of law enforcement resources that were spent in this case by the Sheriff's Department, the Milwaukee Police Department, the FBI, the amount of resources that were spent on this case, I think is probably unparalleled in Milwaukee history. The amount of money and time and effort that was put into collecting video evidence, to searching Maxwell's home, to interviewing coworkers, interviewing people that might know him, an immense investigation. And the state knows that there are serious holes in their case. They know it. They know that there's reasonable doubt, and that's why they're coming at you with this phrase like common sense. So let's talk about that. There is absolutely no reason for Max to commit a crime like this. What you're going to hear in this trial is that Max and Sade lined up a date together like any couple of youngsters do, and they lined up a date at Twisted Fisherman. This is a place that Max used to work. You'll hear that they went there, they had dinner, and it was an ordinary evening. From Twisted Fisherman, as the state just told you, they went to Duke's. This is another place where Max is known. There was no secret place that Max took Sade that night, nowhere that anybody wouldn't have known him or recognized him. These are former places he worked and coworkers that he interacted with. And what I didn't hear was the theory of why Max did this, how Max did this, but I think what I heard in opening just now is that Max must have done this at his home. That seems to be the theory. Max brought Sade back to his home and killed her. Why? It's a normal date. You'll see them on camera footage leaving Duke's. You'll see them, Sade driving back to his place. You'll see them going there. In this timeline you were just given, I don't know how many witnesses they're going to call throughout this trial to put in this video or that video, but one thing you'll see throughout this is that we don't dispute any of that timeline, that they went out together and went back to Max's house, but that doesn't mean he killed her. How did he do it, and why did he do it? Why would he ever do something like that? If Max killed Sade in his home, if it happened in that location, as I think they're offering to you, there would be a mountain of DNA evidence. There would be blood. There would be some form of DNA. And I listened carefully when I heard the state's opening, because yes, it's gruesome. Yes, it's horrible. Nobody deserves it. But what was glaringly missing from what I heard was any discussion about DNA evidence. We have a crime lab in the state, law enforcement agencies that are tasked with collecting evidence from locations. I believe the theory that you're being offered today is that Sade was killed at Maxwell's house. What you'll hear about Max's house, I want to tell you a couple of things they didn't tell you. One is that the house is a duplex, upper and lower. There's a stairwell you can enter through the side of the home. If you go in the stairwell, there is a lower unit that has a tenant, if you will, a tenant who lives on the lower level. His name is Pete Warbington. You'll hear his testimony in this trial. Max lives upstairs. And the two of them went to that unit, that house. Pete Warbington, who's home on the lower level, is there that night. You will hear that Mr. Warbington is a self-described or self-professed light sleeper. I think one of the things he had said to the police is, even if one of Max's dogs is chewing a bone on the floor, he would even hear that and send messages to Max, your dog is chewing a bone, you're keeping me up, you're bothering me. He's a very light sleeper guy. And what Pete Warbington will tell you is that he was home, he was there that night, there was no struggle, there was no fight, there was no horrific event, argument between Max and Sade, but this is a downstairs tenant who can hear even the TV playing. He doesn't hear a thing, nothing. No struggle, no indication whatsoever that a murder is happening or happened upstairs. There is a common basement they share, but many of you can picture the type of home I'm describing, I'm sure. You walk in the door and it's a small stairwell that goes upstairs. So presumably their theory is that Max killed Sade upstairs. They didn't say it, they're suggesting the home, but upstairs, or maybe the basement is their theory. Either way, law enforcement pulled everything from that home. They searched it not once, but twice, 2 separate searches. You will also hear, by the way, that because of the publicity this case generated, other people had access to that home, social justice people who were riled up online, who showed up at the home, entered, put up banners, entered the home, had access to the area. You'll hear about that too. But law enforcement, for sure, searched the home twice. They didn't find a murder weapon. What weapon was used to kill Sade? They didn't find any of Sade's blood. With all the samples they took throughout that entire house, every comforter, bed sheet, tabletop, wall, none of it has Sade's DNA, blood or DNA. And then I think the theory is that Max drove Sade's car and dismembered her, that Max did that. With what instruments? And you'll hear from medical examiners in this case that at least one medical examiner who will testify about the sheer force that would be required to remove human limbs. That's no easy task. It's not the kind of thing that you do with a little Swiss Army knife. It's the kind of thing that you do with things like bone saws that they use in autopsies, no evidence of which Max has ever been in possession of or ever researched anything. They looked at everything about Max. Internet history, text message history. His text messages with Sade weren't deleted. They looked through his search history. Has he researched how to cut up a body or how to kill someone? No, absolutely not. No evidence of that. You would expect that if she died at his house, as they are suggesting, that there would be blood and DNA in that home. Another thing that wasn't mentioned in opening. At Warmont Park, Sade's body, as you heard, a leg wash is located at Warmont Park. As law enforcement was looking through that area, they found bloody gloves. Now, these gloves played a central part in law enforcement's investigation because those gloves are sort of the quintessential evidence of a dismemberment or a murder. They have blood on them, they're plastic, sort of what you can picture, plastic gloves that you would wear, they're the clear type. And law enforcement, what they do is they try to determine, because they're certain you don't find bloody gloves near the scene, very close proximity to a leg. Certainly these gloves play some role in this crime. And so they look for any connection between Max and these gloves. They go to a place he volunteered at. They go to former places where he's worked. You'll hear that Max has worked at various bars in Milwaukee. He was a bartender is a bartender in the community. In that they looked at these gloves, these bloody gloves that were found by the leg, in that these gloves did not have Max Anderson's DNA on them. None. 1 in a quadrillion, or whatever the statistics are. They're not ever anything that he wore. And with respect to Sade's DNA, it's uninformative. Could be, could not be. Not able to rule it out. And not once do these gloves ever connect to Max, ever. Now, person that's seen him wear gloves like this, they don't match with the place he volunteered at. They don't match at any of the restaurants and kitchens that he's worked at. No connection. Sade's burning car. We know that the car is lit on fire near 30th in Lisbon or 31st in Lisbon, and you'll do with that what you will. I'll say this. The question is going to be, did Max light that car on fire? That's how you get to guilty or not guilty on the arson. Was Max the one who lit that car on fire? I find it interesting, and I hope you will too, that when we look at DNA evidence and we think about the importance of that type of evidence, the reason why it's so crucial is because we know from our human experiences that people can be wrong. We know people can be mistaken. We know that people can believe they saw something when they didn't see something. So I'm going to ask you, all of you, to implore you, study the evidence closely. When you're done with this trial and you take this back in the jury room, study everything very, very closely with a fine-tooth comb. Because eyewitnesses can be wrong, but the way we either prove or disprove it is we collect DNA swabs and we send things to our crime lab and we test them to see, does this link the person to an item? There is no accelerant or flammable liquid that connects to Max, nothing from his clothes where they can say, oh, this jacket he wore had gasoline or lighter fluid on it. But most significantly, they swabbed the exterior door handle of Sade Robinson's car. Her DNA is on her exterior door handle. Max's DNA is not. This is the same car that is burning in that area of 31st in Lisbon. And a person can be, we know from jury selection, in the wrong place at the wrong time. So what of all this video evidence that you just heard about in opening? That there's, and I told you as well, hundreds of hours of video footage that's pulled from Capitol Drive, Lisbon. Interestingly, you will hear, as Mr. Vance Curzan just told you, that when Sade left Max's house, her car actually went to Commerce Street in the Lower East Side, actually right past where she lives. You'll hear that. But what's important about the video evidence, all the footage that they pulled from every, and you'll learn a lot in this trial, the amount of cameras as you can imagine exist, double it or triple it, what you might think is out there. Poll cams that the Milwaukee Police Department keeps throughout the city. Ring doorbells you'd never know are hidden in a certain spot. Convenience stores that have a camera on the side. All of this video, all the hundreds of hours of video of when Sade's, and I say 100-hour collectively because what you're talking about is all these videos that go back hours and they examine all of them. Not one time on any of the video footage do you ever see Max Anderson driving Sade Robinson's Civic, ever. You can see the car, but you can't ever conclude that he is the one who is driving this vehicle. It's a pure speculation. And his phone never leaves his house after Sade goes home. What would one expect to see after an offense like this? What would you expect to see happens with Max Anderson? Perhaps changes in one's appearance. Perhaps they flee town. Perhaps they're acting different and nervous and unusual at work. Nothing changed with Max Anderson's routine after he and Sade had their date together. Continued to go to work. You'll hear from coworkers managers and coworkers that saw him, he continued going to his jobs. He didn't change his appearance. He didn't cut his hair. He didn't concoct some plan to leave town. He didn't try to talk to the downstairs tenant to concoct stories. None of that. And that's because he wasn't responsible for any of this. There would be no reason for him to do those things. And when law enforcement did their investigation and began looking into things and looking for her blood and looking for her DNA, they were presented with the fact, and looking for Max on video driving her car, they were presented with the inescapable fact that all of it excludes him. And that's why you hear a phrase like common sense in voir dire and now. And I'm not telling you to ignore common sense, to be clear, not what we're saying. But when they emphasize a phrase like search for the truth, use common sense, it's at the exclusion of an equally, if not more important phrase, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Justice sometimes is hard to administer. Finding Max Anderson not guilty because there is reasonable doubt is your duty, as hard as that can be in cases where we know that they're particularly gruesome. But Max had nothing to do with these crimes. And the law says it's not enough for him to look guilty or maybe be guilty, or there's a few bad things that look bad. They have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And when you, as jurors, start to go into the jury room and examine these pieces of evidence, you will be confronted with nothing but reasonable doubt, and your duty is to return a not guilty verdict. Thank you.